Intelligent people often struggle with discipline more than everyone else. And it's not because they're lazy. It's because they're trying to solve a skills problem with willpower. The most disciplined people I've ever worked with, they're not just using more motivation than you are. They've learned a specific set of skills that make action feel automatic. And today I'm going to show you what those skills are so you can start applying them to yourself right away. Now, what I want more than anything right now is that this is something you can take action on and start to fix your situation right away. So what I went ahead and did is I put together a tool that you can use right now to make this whole process easier. It's called the Discipline Diagnostic, and there's a link for it in the description of this video below. Let's dive in. Have you ever known somebody who always seemed to have their life together? Like, they're always dressed sharp, they're always on time, they always know exactly the right thing to say, what to do, how to handle any situation. I want you to hold in your mind who that is for you. Now, most people will look at that person and they'll think, wow, they're so disciplined, but they didn't get there overnight. There are key things that they did along the way to becoming that person that allowed them to be that person. So what we see as discipline, they see as just a way of life. And so we all have these people that we can envision for those situations. We all have that person in our life that when we think of, we say, boom, that person's got it all figured out. For me, it was a mentor, an educator of mine, early on in my neuro career. And what this person would teach me, this was Dr. Eric Cobb. And it was amazing to me to see how he prepared, oh, that chicken's outside. It was amazing for me to see how he prepared for a course. He was so organized. It was like as soon as he entered the room, he flipped a switch and became a different person. He went from relaxed, everyday Eric to, boom, I am now professional Eric. And that transition always stuck with me when I got to see it happen. These chickens are going crazy out here. It made me realize how powerful a change of mind could be in how you show up to the world. And that stuck with me so much that when I decided that I wanted to go pro in my life, in my business, in helping people, I knew I was going to have to become more disciplined. But I thought what most people think, which is that discipline is just a matter of motivation. How deep of a well of motivation can I dig? How much can I draw on so that I can just keep going and going and going? And I can tell you right now what I've learned since paying attention to people and looking for this, that was a mistake. It was a mistake that cost me time, it was a mistake that cost me energy, and it's a mistake I'm going to try and help you avoid. You see, when we think of discipline just as a matter of motivation, I just gotta find a way to keep showing up. I gotta have willpower, and I just go and I go and I go. The problem with that is that a lot of people, they will work and work and work until they run out of motivation. They run out of willpower. They run out of energy. Motivation and willpower are finite resources. What that means is that it's not an endless supply of motivation. If you've got traffic that you got stuck in, you got stress, you got all sorts of life stuff going on, you've got money problems, you got this, you got that, you got the other, that all depletes your motivation. And when you're already used to operating at a high level, when you're out of motivation and you still have a high standard for yourself, everything else will fall to the wayside. So when we want to be disciplined, we don't want to rely on a finite resource to get us through. Because if motivation is something we can run out of, motivation is not something we can rely on. Instead, we want to lower the motivational cost of our discipline. Okay? So when it comes to lowering the cost required for discipline, there are two things we want to think about right out of the gate. One, how much motivation does this thing cost me? Okay? If something requires a great deal of willpower, a great deal of motivation to do, to show up for, to overcome, do you think that's something that you're going to be able to do every single day, even on days where you're already depleted before you get there? Probably not. So we want to think about lowering the cost involved so that we can either do the thing we want to do or stop doing the thing we don't want to do. And my dog over here stretching out. So the two things we want to do for that, we want to either increase the friction or decrease the friction involved with our desired outcome. We would want to increase friction. By that I mean increase the amount of effort required to not do the thing we don't want to do. If I know that scrolling on my phone is counterproductive to my goals, I want to find a way to make that friction higher so that it's not as easy for me to do. To put that another way, I want to increase the amount of motivation required to scroll on my phone. What I could do is things like maybe put my phone in another room while I'm working. What I could do is I could maybe set a bunch of passwords or timers or restrictions on how my phone actually operates during certain hours of the day. In worst case scenario, I can get one of those phones that only does black and white and actually doesn't have any accessibility at all. And one other thing I could do, and this is actually something that has been scientifically tested, if you put your phone on grayscale mode, meaning it's just black and white, there's no color, that actually will reduce the amount of time people use their phone by upwards of 40%, just by changing the colors on the screen. So if you want to make it so that you spend less time on your phone, you want to make the friction higher. On the other hand, if there's a goal I want to actually do, but it's hard for me to do, I want to lower that overall friction. I want to figure out how to eliminate as many steps between the starting point and the end point as possible. So that might be things like laying out my gym clothes the day ahead of time. If I'm trying to go to the gym, trying to build that habit, if I put my gym clothes out the night before, well, that's one less thing I have to do in the morning when I wake up. That's one less opportunity for me to give up and not do that task. So if I look at it as, well, what are things I can do to change my environment to make it easier to access? That is a fantastic way of lowering friction to accomplish the desired goal. And when I lower the friction enough, I don't have to use as much motivation or willpower to get there. So what I want to do is I want to think, can I lower the cost? Can I lower the barriers? Can I lower the roadblocks between where I am and where I want to go? Or can I raise the cost, increase the barriers between where I am and the things standing in my way of where I want to go? So if scrolling on my phone is not the thing that's going to help me get where I want to go, I need to raise that cost, so I have to use more motivation to do it and make it so my system says that's just not worth it anymore. Or I need to lower the cost so my system says that's way easier, we don't have to expend as much effort, let's go ahead and do that again. That's what I want to do when it comes to friction. But friction, as great as a tool as that is not the only thing that successful, disciplined people use. There's two other tools that they use, and we're going to talk about those now. Now, once we have our friction in place to create either more or less of a willpower requirement, depending on what we want to do or stop doing, the next thing we need to do is we need to get clear on who we want to show up as. Because despite what all of the self-help books out there will tell you and all of the online self-help gurus will say, it is not simply a matter of just showing up and doing the work. There's a famous quote from Alcoholics Anonymous that says, all progress starts by telling the truth. And the truth is, if you were already where you wanted to be, you would already be the person that's capable of getting there. But since you're not there just quite yet, what that tells us is that there is a gap. There's a gap between who you are and who you want to be. And that gap is the difference between who you are and who you need to be able to accomplish the goal that you want. And once we acknowledge that we have room to grow, that changes everything. That changes how we choose what foods we eat. That changes how we choose what we're going to spend our time on, what we're going to spend our money on. It changes how we're going to work out. It changes every aspect of the choices that we make. If we don't think we can improve, we don't make choices for our better self. So what we need to do is we need to get clear on where we want to go. We need to get clear on what version of you has already completed that goal. And then we reverse engineer it. Rather than just go through all of the what ifs or coulda, woulda, shouldas, I want you to actually, once you're clear on the goal, get very clear on what that person is that accomplished that goal has that you in your current state does not have. What are the differences between them in the future and you in the present? What do they have that would make accomplishing that very easy that you currently don't have? Once we understand that, then we just fill in the gap. We fill in the gap with necessary skills or behaviors or personality traits, things that you currently are not in possession of that they are, that make accomplishing that goal that you want easy. And there may be roadblocks too, so we have to figure out how to remove those. That's where the friction comes back into play. But you need to ask yourself, who do you want to be? Okay? Who is the person that you want to become? Not just what goal do you want, but who do you want to be in the process or after the process of accomplishing that goal? Because a lot of times we want the goal, we don't want to change who we are. And that's why we never get there. So we want to know who we want to become, or rather who we don't want to become, or who we don't want to stay in our pursuit of our goal. Those are the questions you need to ask. When you're clear on that, when you're telling yourself the truth about those things, then you can start making progress on changing who you are so that you can show up as the person that is capable of that goal. And then you start acting as if. You start acting as if you're that person. You start acting as if accomplishing that goal is easy. You start acting as if you are that person that can do whatever you want to do. But if you act as if you're not able to change, you act as if you're stuck where you're at, guess what you're going to prove yourself right on? That you're not capable. And that's not what's true. That's not what you want, and we're not going to lean into that. We're going to lean into your potential. But you have to get clear on what that is and the direction you want to go in. Then we know which way to aim the slingshot we just wound up. So once you know who that is, where you want to go, we can step into that role and start acting from that place. And now there's one more step. And you could be doing everything else right, but if you miss this one piece, you could easily fall off course and not get back on when you need to. So first I want to ask you a question. If you knew today that if you went out and bought a lotto ticket, you would win, would you go buy it? 100% certainty you're going to win. If you go buy a lotto ticket today, you are the winner. Would you go buy that ticket? Most of you are probably saying, yeah, of course I would. Why wouldn't I? Now, what if I told you, if you were to buy 100 lotto tickets, that you would win, but only on ticket 101? Would you go out and buy 100 tickets? Probably yes, right? That's really what it comes down to when it comes to getting to your goal. Is there is a set number of attempts that you have to make before you actually get to the point of being able to hit that goal. Now, what happens is a lot of people expect it to be easy. They try once, they try twice, they try 3 times, they fall off. There's research out there that says that on average, somebody will take about 13 attempts at changing a behavior before it actually sticks. Now, obviously, that's going to be dependent upon the complexity of the behavior, the size of the behavior, pre-existing circumstances, lots of variability there. But what it tells us is that people have to try more than once. As most people approach discipline from a willpower and motivation lens, or a just showing up and doing the work lens, what ends up happening is they fail. They fail again and again and again, and eventually people get tired of failing. And if you get tired of failing enough, you quit. It's very easy to quit. What we want to do is we actually want to reframe how you think about failure. Failure isn't simply a matter of you doing something wrong. Failure is not a character flaw. Failure is part of the process. But most importantly, failure is your opportunity to learn from the strategy that you are employing. You see, if you have a plan of getting to where you want to go, you go out and you try enacting that plan and something happens. You can go back and re-engineer that and say, why did that fall apart? Why wasn't I able to do the thing I thought I was going to do? Oh, well, because this other thing happened and I wasn't expecting it and it threw me off course. So you go back to the drawing board. You draw out a new plan, a plan that involves that crazy thing happening and what you're going to do if that happens again. And then you go out and you enact that new plan. And you get a little bit further along, and then something else happens and you go back to the drawing board. Every time you fail is an opportunity for you to learn from that plan. Why did it fail? Why did it fail? Why did you have that mistake? Why did that work out the way that it did or didn't? Failure is your chance to learn. Failure is just a feedback loop. The faster we can get feedback, the faster we can figure out what we need to change. Now, when it comes to feedback from a nervous system standpoint or from a health standpoint, there's really only two kinds of feedback that you're going to get. You're going to get outcome-related feedback, or you're going to get output-related feedback. Outcome-related feedback would be feedback like that number on the scale going in that certain direction. If it's going up and you don't want it to go up, that's going to make you feel a certain way. You're going to see money in your bank account. That's an outcome. How hard you have to work to put on your favorite pair of jeans. That is an outcome. It's an outcome resultant of the choices and the behaviors that led up to that. You're measuring very downstream of the actual action, but you're getting feedback telling you, did your plan work or not? Now, the opposite of that is the output-related feedback. Output-related feedback is what I call assess, reassess. It is where you have an assessment process to determine how your nervous system is responding in real time to whatever it is that you're doing. When you know that a certain type of exercise is not good for you, you probably don't want to do more of it, right? And if you know that certain exercise modality or training or rehab drill is good for your brain and nervous system, you want to know that so you can do more of that and not wait for weeks or months later until you actually have that outcome-related response and say, I missed the boat on that one. If you could tell in real time that something is helpful or something is harmful, that will shape the decisions you make. We want that feedback. We want to know what is actually helping you. And the way we do that is to assess and reassess. And I have a video on that I just filmed, that if you want to go watch that and learn more about that exact process, I have it linked below in the description, and I'm going to post it at the end of this video here. But when you know that what you're doing is helping or harmful, you can make a decision quickly to change your strategy. And when you change your strategy and you change it in the way that's going to help you, that you can then test and you can say, cool, that didn't work, let's try this instead, you're going to get faster feedback. So those 100 lotto tickets we were talking about buying, you'll get through that process faster. You won't be buying the same lotto ticket again and again and again and wondering why you're no closer. Every ticket you buy will be a different number. Every ticket you buy will count towards that 100. Every ticket you buy will get you closer to where you want to go. But you have to go through that process to get there. The faster you fail, the faster you learn. The faster you learn, the faster you're going to grow. The faster you can look back on that event or that strategy and then revise it with new information and a new lens, the faster you can change the iteration and move down the system. So be okay with failure. Be okay with that being a part of the process. Not because we just want you to show up and do reps, but because we want you to show up and learn. And you're not going to learn until you do. It's okay if you fail because that's learning. Listen, if you're tired of showing up and making promises to yourself that you can't keep and that you feel the same after your efforts 3 days later, that's exactly why I put together the training I did over at brainhab.com. The issue isn't that you lack discipline around your body. It's that nobody taught you the skills to return that control and get you your life back. I go deeper into how to reduce friction, reshape your identity, and use your setbacks as a way of creating momentum instead of losing it. If you want to learn more about how I have helped hundreds of clients restore their metabolism and healed their nervous system, give yourself some uninterrupted time and go check out that video at brainhab.com. I'll see you soon.